you stop? Stop. Say at the shop we talk brakes. See, I got a beer. My bad, guys. I'd have a shitty intro if I had a cousin that did that, but I don't. Oh, that's nice. I'm tinkering around the shop this afternoon. It's a little brisk. It's a little cold. I realized while I was tinkering that I've got a couple of different versions of brake upgrades that you could do to the Frontier, Pathfinder, and Xterra. And I went ahead and I pulled in my little shop Frontier. And I pulled the wheel off it just for you guys so we can discuss the brake upgrades that you can do to your Frontier, your Xterra, or your Pathfinder. Pathfinder is a little different because it's got an independent rear suspension, so things in the back end of it are going to be a little bit wonky. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but right now we're going to concentrate kind of on the front and just go over the braking system as a whole. The stock rotor size is an 11.6, I believe. I've got notes. The stock rotor size is an 11.6, and I don't want to steer anyone in the wrong direction. Okay, cool. Just so we're all on the same page. I want to make sure that you guys have a good experience, a better experience than I've had, because like I'm silly. I do a whole bunch of shit backwards. Like I built a whole bunch of stuff, take a whole bunch of stuff off, put other stuff on. Let's not do that. So for the first and foremost, the best thing that you can do as far as like your braking system, make sure that your brakes are in good working condition. Like here, for example, let's see here. So this is the caliper design that almost all the brakes that we talk about today are going to be designed like this. This is the top hat. It's like a floating caliper on these slide pins here. The best thing that you can do for your pads is to make sure that these slide pins actually slide. Look at how smooth that is. So this is used. Oh yeah, that's nice. So that's like first and foremost, one of the main things that you can do is to make sure the maintenance is done properly on your vehicle. So make sure that your lines are not rusty, make sure that they're not leaking, make sure that if they're soft lines, they aren't bloated. You want to make sure that your fluid's topped off and your fluid is in good condition. If you don't make sure all that stuff is good, whenever you try to upgrade, you're going to have a bad time anyway. Now, if like a caliper's bad, you're going to swap a caliper out. I get that kind of stuff. But you just want to make sure that your brakes are in proper operating condition before you consider upgrading, because you might not need to. So beyond making sure that everything's in good working order, a good set of rotors and a good set of pads. You don't need to start throwing money at this braking system. The brakes on these trucks work great. We are not Toyotas. We don't have shitty drum brakes in the rear. We have a good set of front rotors and pads. We have a great set of rear rotors and pads. Brakes work phenomenally. Just treat them right. So a good set of rotors, a good set of pads. If you want more, this is like the next level up, and this is like my favorite setup. This is what I'm currently going back to on my VK truck. The next level up, you're going to go from a 11.6 inch rotor. Oh, I can't forget my beer. Oh, I got notes and a beer. The next level rotor that you're going to, dude, that frosted mug makes it nice. Oh shit, tripping. The next rotor that you're going to, the size up, is what's called, this is it right here, is what's called the Pathfinder V8 rotor caliper pad upgrade. What that lets you do is that lets you keep your hub, your little spinny boy. Let me get around here. Shop's a mess. So these are the Pathfinder calipers, and just also to note that I think the Pathfinders fronts maybe mount them a little bit differently. These came switched around, but you just want to make sure when you're installing them that this bleed screw is aimed upwards. But what this upgrade does is it lets you keep your hub spacing. So you get to use Frontier wheels, Xterra wheels, Pathfinder wheels. With one caveat is it is recommended to run a 17-inch wheel. I don't know if you can run a 16. I wouldn't, just because to run a 16, you're going to have a higher offset wheel to push your wheel away from that caliper, which is what's going to contact. So to run that, you're going to kind of start looking like a roller skate. If they say that they really recommend 17s, they recommend 17s. So the Pathfinder V8 brake upgrade, you need the Pathfinder rotors, pads, calipers. You need the dust shield, which you don't have to run it. Honestly, I would buy it and then just wait until your hub goes out. So once your hub goes out right here, whenever you take your hub off, the dust shield will fall. But until that happens, I would just let it ride. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's just one of those peace of mind things. You're like, oh yeah, I got it all 100% done. So as far as that goes, that increases your front inch rotor diameter by 1 inch, gives you more contact on the rotor itself, on the pad. It just gives you better braking. I know that the brake master cylinder might be a tiny, we're talking tiny bit larger on that bore size for that piston, but I don't think it's necessary. I think you're gonna waste your time. I don't think it's important to do it in this specific setup if you're just gonna do the Pathfinder front V8 brake upgrade. I think it's a great brake upgrade. I think it's the best bang for your buck. You are essentially, I mean, you could just order your pads and rotors and calipers from Rock Auto, box your old ones back up and send them off. And then you're really kind of not too much over just a regular brake change, and you get a nice, much larger pad, but just be aware of that wheel size change from a 16 to a 17, because most Frontiers, most Pathfinders, at least in the early years, all came with 16s. Very rarely did you see 17s on them from the factory. So it's something to be aware of. That is by far the best bang for the buck as far as upgrades can go when you're actually trying to change something about the brakes and not just upgrade the rotor and pad. Cool. The next level, we gotta stop for a beer. Oh my God. The frosted mug really is doing it in for me. The next level up would be what's called, like, I guess the Titan 2004 and plus. Up to the end of 2007. So between the years of 2004 to 2007, Titan brakes, which were actually over here. These are actually the Titan 2008 brakes, so I don't want to show you those yet. But the Titan 2004 to 2007 are nearly identical in size to the Pathfinder V8 brakes here. So that is the 12.5. Thinking I may have said 11.6 earlier. But the Pathfinder V8 rotor, 12.5. The 2004 to 2007 Titan rotor is nearly like right out of 12.5. And what that's gonna do, that's a lot more work, but what that's gonna do is that's gonna give you the 6x5, it's the 6-lug bolt pattern, and it's 5x5.5, I think is what it is. It's a common full-size Chevy, like a half-ton Chevy truck. It is that bolt pattern. So that is gonna open you up to being able to run just a mess of wheels that you couldn't run before, and they are dirt cheap. So that, I think, is gonna be like the primary draw of that specific upgrade. Not only are you getting the brakes, but you're also getting the more desired bolt pattern. Just forewarned, when you do that, you do have to upgrade the hubs. So there is a bit more of an incurred cost with that. And not only hubs, but you have to run a spindle as well. And see, I've got my Frontier spindle over here. So the main difference between the spindles is this is going to be a 4-bolt spindle, and this is Frontier, Pathfinder, and Xterra specific. Do you see the 4 bolts here for the hub? This is just a dust shield. So that is what is going to let you know what you can put on as far as an actual hub goes. The Titans are a, oh, here you can see right here. So the Titan is a 3-bolt triangle pattern. And that thing is used and dirty. But other than that, they're the same size, so you're not gonna lift your truck if you don't want to. You're not gonna change anything. That is just changing that spindle connection so you can run a different hub. It is a lot of work, but I've seen guys do it. From there, again, they recommend 17s, and I just really want to caution running an aftermarket wheel if you also have the Titan suspension swap. If you have the Titan suspension swap, your wheel and tire are going to poke out quite a bit. And then whenever you run like that high offset wheel to get like a smaller wheel, say you don't want to run man, I don't think that you can run 16s on that. I don't even think people have tried. Stick with a 17. 17 on anything really, except for the next level up, which is the 2008 Plus Titan front rotor, and that is a 13.7 inch rotor. So we go from an 11.6, which is the stock rotor size on like the shop Frontier, to a 13.7. So we get a full 2-inch increase in diameter as far as the rotor size goes. And that's huge. That is amazing. That is what I actually ran on this truck for the last 4-ish almost years. I had great luck with it. I didn't have any want for braking whenever I smashed the brakes. It wouldn't say it would lock the tires up easy because they were 35s. But if I mashed them, yeah, it's stopping. It's obviously if you're in dirt, it'd lock them up instantly. If you're on a road, it just tried to stop the truck really fast. And it did. I also had really soft suspension, so I think that was another factor too. I think if everything was like super, super stiff and I just stood on the brake going fast, it would lock them up well. But the same deal on that Titan on the 2008, now they recommend an 18-inch wheel. And same thing as I mentioned earlier, I would not try to find an aftermarket wheel to fit this unless you are not Titan swapped suspension-wise. If you are stock and you just swap the spindle so you can get the Titan wheels and the Titan brakes, that is where I would start looking for an aftermarket set of wheels, because you're going to get the poke of like the Titan suspension swap, but you won't get the poke of both. Like the suspension mixed with a high offset wheel, you're going to look like a roller skate. Not a good idea. I wouldn't do it. That really covers the front. The front is like kind of the area that you're actually going to have the best luck as far as bolt-on goes and as far as performance goes. The rear is a whole different story. The rear ends between the Frontier and the Xterra are the same, the C200K and then the M226. The M226 is where you want to start as like a baseline, because that M226 rear end, for the most part, is shared between the Titan and the Xterra and the Frontier. The Pathfinder has the R180 independent. No, not R180. That's the front end on the. You gotta. I'm fucking drinking over here. We got to be careful. I'm not nearly as familiar on the Pathfinders as I am on the Frontiers, just so we're clear. But with the rear end being independent on the Pathfinder, the Armadas have an independent rear suspension as well. I do think there is a way to put the Armada rear end into the Pathfinder, and that's going to give you a bigger rear differential. That is going to, I would assume, maybe give you a better, suspension rear shock connection. Maybe it's a little bit better geometry. But it's also going to give you bigger brakes back there. That is all I know for the rear end on the Pathfinder. On the Frontier, on the Xterras, we're super, super limited. The only things that I know that you could really do, you could take some axles out of a Titan M226 and you can get them shortened, and then you would have to have the ends of them geared out, to mesh the gears together with the carrier. And that would at least give you the Titan bolt pattern on the outside of the axle, and then you could run Titan rear brakes, because that would give you the same, the 6x5.5 bolt pattern. You could get rotors for a Titan and then drill them, and then you would have to do something on the casing on the outside of the axle. Maybe an adapter. Maybe you would have to weld a whole new plate on it so you could run a different caliper. The rear is way worse to do than the front. The front, everything that I had mentioned so far is all a bolt-on affair. It's all basic mechanic stuff. It's all basic mechanic tools. You can do the bleeding and all that shit in-house. You don't have to take it anywhere. But what I'm talking about for the rear, you're going to need to have a high mechanical aptitude. You're going to need to be able to do some machine work. Without that, I would stop at the front, because the front's really kind of, as far as brake biases go, that's where you're going to do most of your braking anyway. And again, we're not Toyotas. We have solid rear disc brakes. We are the shit. My brother's got a Tacoma that has drum brakes. So, and finally for the front, and I'm only going to mention this because there are some crazy people out there. And I love Z1 Motorsports, Z1 Off-Road. I think they're fucking amazing. These dudes are the shit. They really, really are. They sell a fixed caliper upgrade for the Frontier, I think Xterra. I don't know if it's all four or if it's just the front. I think it might be all four. That goes to a fixed caliper. I have had some experiences with fixed calipers. They're fine. They're a lot more maintenance intensive. You have to shim them. You have to keep them set right. They don't float around with your rotor as you turn because it's fixed. So there's a lot more to factor in, and it's very expensive. So as far as like the fixed caliper goes, I would only go that route if you are crazy, because it's really pricey. And the Pathfinder V8 upgrade that I mentioned, you can do for just a little bit over, like just a brake change. Like whenever your brakes come due, like another couple $100 more than that will get you the Pathfinder V8 brake setup. But I wanted to mention it. I wanted to mention that Z1 does make it because I think it's cool. I think that they're an awesome name, and not only aftermarket parts, but OEM parts, just anything top to bottom, they're amazing. So I did want to mention it. It is very pricey. I think I kind of ran through everything, man. I really did. Again, the biggest things and best things that you can do is just make sure that you are maintained properly. Make sure that you have a good set of pads and rotors on your stock setup. If you want more, the next item in like your list in the road that you're going to travel down is to get the Pathfinder V8 brakes. And all that is a bolt-on affair. That is probably going to be like the best thing that you can do because it's just OEM. Obviously, you don't have to change the hub. There's just so many good things about it. It would be silly not to do it if you like tinker and if you're like someone that messes with, vehicles. Kind of the deal, right? But that's it. That's all I had. I didn't get near as much of this beer down as I wanted to during this, but all right. That was it. Thanks, guys. Peace.